On the topic of fear, we're going to rewind the clock to one of the most amazing heats ever at Chopu, the 2014 final between Gabriel Medina and Kelly Slater for this week's edition of the Rearview, sponsored by BF Goodrich Tires. BF Goodrich is celebrating 150 years in 2020, and for all our listeners that use social media, which is probably all of them, if you want to wish BF Goodrich a happy 150th anniversary, you can tag at BF Goodrich Tires and use the hashtag BFG and WSL. Happy 150 to BF Goodrich, and thank you for supporting these conversations. All right, let's get into the rear view. All right, so this is the rear view presented by BF Goodrich. This is the Billabong Pro Tahiti final, and we're off. This is Gabriel Medina, first wave of the final. Oh, man, this is actually, I went and looked this up. This was actually a heat restart. They went 10 minutes, and they pushed each other too deep on one. And then right after the restart, Gabriel got this wave, which I think set him up for the heat. I'm interested to hear everyone's opinion on how important getting the first wave is when you guys compete. You know, Carolyn, I'll start with you. Is that something that you don't have to give away state secrets, I guess, but is that something that you generally try to do when you're surfing against these the world's best surfers?
I think it's awesome to get the first wave, but you definitely don't want to just like take a bad wave just to ride the first wave, you know. But it is always nice to, you know, start off with that first good score, and it kind of just gives you that confidence and just get your feet in the wax. And so, yeah, I definitely like to kind of ride a lot of waves when I'm in my heat in general. So I personally, if you can start off with the first best wave, it's definitely ideal for sure.
And this wave came in at a 7.9 for Gabriel. And as I was saying, that vault episode from 2003, on that scale, that would have been like, I don't know, like a 42 out of 10 comparatively. Like that wave is nuts. And that, like, it's just really radical to see how far everyone's come in surfing in such a short period of time.
How buttery were the conditions, huh?
It was perfect.
Jeez.
But as you said, like it does look like a closeout. You know, I think what Tyler was saying before, like, you know, even on those really big days, like when you're just staring at it, you kind of look down the end of the reef and it just folds over, and you're like, I would die. Like if I'd even try to get that wave, but you kind of just have to. I would imagine you kind of just have to find that little fold at the start and get in and get out before it closes out. Tyler, what do you think about that?
Yeah, like I don't feel like I have enough experience there to really make a comment. I only surfed it when it was quite big, and yeah, as I said, it's just a closeout, and you know, I think it is. Yeah, like I can see why, you know, when it's going to be big and the guys are sending through going, should we call it off? Like you know, it's a scary kind of wave. But yeah, I don't know. I think I don't have enough experience there to really make a comment. And
you got to get on one of those nice, like 6 to 8 foot, like clean. You got to go hang out with Carolyn or Tati. It sounds like they're on the program.
I know. It sounds like they really nailed it. And I definitely got towed into a bit of a closeout by Owen and Rip Curl. And
I was going to say that your brother dragged you out there. So that's a red flag for me already.
100%. And the really good thing, like Tati did touch on something that I think should really be highlighted. It's highlighted through both of my brothers, and Mikey is probably, I've done, you know, more recently done a few sessions with him, and I think he's always like, oh, look at this thing, it's nuts.
Oh, wow.
But
Jeez.
like the support that you do get in the lineup when it is kind of bigger, you are one of the few girls out there. I know in the session that I did at Chopu, Ian Walsh and a couple of the Hawaiian guys were there, and Owen really kind of took us through it and was like, look, if you turn for any set, they will let you go. If they do not, they will be looked at like a kook, because they are, because you're out there and what you're trying to do is, you know, you're the only girl, you're the only one that's trying to be out here right now and catching these waves. So I think that's really, like, in all the big sessions that I've done, there's been a bunch of guys there that going, you've got this, put yourself here, put yourself here. Mikey's incredible at it, and yeah.
Now, Tati, this approach that Gabriel has with the double arm stall, you're on your forehand as well. Is that something that you've experienced out there on your trip so far? Like on your forehand, you have so much speed, and it's such a quick barrel that you really have to like essentially just stall and grab as much wall as you can before just to maximize the barrel. Is that something that you've had to work with?
Well, this last trip to Chopu, there was so many days in a row where it was like by the end of it, I was almost studying the best guys' techniques, and every single guy that was frontside up there was doing the double hand drag. And I was like, how do you do this? Like, my arm is breaking off. Like, I would try to like stick both my arms in the wave, and they just like wouldn't enter. I was like, I definitely like am studying techniques. I know that the double arm drag is something a frontsider needs to do out here if they want to stay in the barrel for longer. I just literally couldn't get my arms in the wave. I think I needed a little bit more practice, but it's really necessary for frontsiders if they want to like, maximize that tube time. And like I said, by the end of it, it was just something I was like getting into like the specifics of like getting barrel at Chopu, and I know you guys were touching on how it looks like a closeout. I mean, I've been there enough to know that when it's a really west wave, people that are actually up the point for the better south ones, like the first wave Gabriel got in this heat, and this one like Kelly, it's like an easy drop. Those are the south ones, the easy drop ones that you can kind of pump from the beginning and then get that long barrel. That's the south direction one, and those are the easier ones actually. But because I was like there with the men, I was actually like not wanting to get like the best waves. I just wanted to get like the leftover kind of waves. And so a lot of those waves would be west waves and the West Bowl. And those are the really intimidating waves. And Ty, like, I know what you mean when it's like the perfect southwest wave at Chopes. Like, there's sometimes not even like an exit on them. And somehow the guys managed to do an amazing job. I can remember off the bat right now that Adriano had a wave last year that he literally barely kicked out the back because it was such a west one that like it was just almost closing out on the reef. And yeah, like choosing those waves at Chopu is seriously all knowledge, and you have to choose the right one. Wow, look at this.
Gabriel again. I remember he was riding like a really thick board, like it was almost 3 inches thick. And the comment about him at this event this year was he was just getting in so much earlier than everyone else. And being able to come in and like set his line like in a better way. And I think it was something like he just had nines pretty much from the quarters onward and never fell. And everyone else was kind of falling, and he just kind of physically was able to get in there.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm not like a whatever. I've only gotten barreled a few times, but I feel like at Chopu, you don't really need that big of a board, like that long of a board. It's such a steep hollow wave, but I think having enough foam and, like I said, having a board that paddles really well is super important because positioning out there is huge. I think it's actually almost everything sometimes on a wave. It's the difference between making it or not making it, or, you can just be like a foot away, and it's like that's the big difference, So I think having a good paddle board is really important for sure.
What about fin setups, like between like quads, or sometimes like people run quads out there quite a lot, and some people just stick to thrusters? Tyler, what's your opinion just in general with like hollow wave boards? Do you stick to your thruster? Do you like to switch it up and have a quad? And if so, what's the difference for you?
I wouldn't say I'm experienced enough with the quad. I've generally just had thrusters. I think it's probably I'm probably entering into the stage of my career where dabbling in things like that is probably what's next. I think I've started to the board, like I've probably now I've only recently started riding boards from Hawaii, from Paisel, and I think his approach on boards is really interesting, and that's why part of one of the draws that kind of I was drawn to because his experience in big waves and his approach with those boards. I find really interesting. But fin setups, I've never dabbled further than a thruster.
I don't feel like anyone else dabbled on it. Like Kelly used it at pipe one time, and then all of a sudden the next event everyone had quads, and they're like, yeah, no, and this is how it works. But it's like there always needs to be like, the canary in the coal mine out there to see if they die or not. And they're like, how will it work if I do that? And Tyler, I know that we talked a little bit to Tati and Carolyn on the front side approach, but are there any surfers, men or women, on their backhand that you study, backhand barrel riding technique from specifically?
I think obviously at Chopu, you can't really go past John or Kelly. They're probably the highlights. I've always found Owen's comments interesting when it comes to, he's a goofy footer, and then the natural versus goofy footer approach out there, and who has the actual advantage. I've always thought, from memory, I haven't had a recent conversation with him about it, but it was always on your backside, you can probably go later. You can knife and kind of swoop up, and then on the front side you fully have to extend on your toes. I think there's a pretty cool shot of Owen from last year where he's 6'4", fully extended, toes just gripping, and then he like pulling up and in. I think that's also a super interesting conversation. But yeah, I think both come with their difficulties and stuff like that. But I definitely, on the natural footer side, John, Kelly, who else? I think Andy. Andy was incredible. I think obviously you can't look past Andy either. So
I think Jamie O'Brien is a really good reference too.
There you go. Yep.
He's both of those are bigger guys too. I mean, I remember it was Andy's last year, so it was 2010, and it wasn't even a very big event that year. It was pretty small. It was kind of like head high, a little bit overhead on the last day, and we had a bunch of days that were lay days, almost kind of unsurfable. And then the afternoon before we finished, a few of the judges and myself went out there because there was no one out there, and it was small. And then the swell started filling, and then a bunch of the surfers came out, like all of them, like, Mick, Kelly, everyone started coming out, and they're all so good. You kind of move down the reef and they're just really, really good. And then Andy came out, and Andy was just like even another level past all the best guys. Even though it was small, like his comfort with that wave on his backhand was just so impressive. Like it was, he just had this way of reading it. He was just deeper and steeper than everyone else, even when it was small, and even when it was probably just kind of a playful session. It was really, really impressive. It was Gabriel again.
Gabe's so good at selling people on waves, hey?
I mean, and this was a huge, huge moment, right? Because he'd just taken the yellow jersey. He hadn't won a world title yet. Like, it's 2014. So Kelly, he won in 2011. He finished runner-up in 2012 and 2013. Like, he is still very, very much in the title hunt. I think he was ranked 6th heading into this event. This was a real statement performance from Gabriel, really kind of taking it to Kelly in waves like this.
I agree.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing out there.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. He was one of the guys on the WhatsApp thread that wasn't complaining last year.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah,
he's just,
whatever. Just tell me when to turn up. It's fine.
I have to say something about last year, because the finals day last year was huge, and like literally there was like an electricity in the air the day before finals day where the guys were like freaking out. Well, how's this one? So I was like staying with obviously my fiance and boyfriend at the time, and he was like really scared, and so was William Cardozo, and so was even Vitor, Jesse's younger brother. I was like already like, well, I'm out tomorrow. Like, I'm not surfing. I'll just show up and watch. Like, good luck. I'll be with you in the channel with like moral support. But It was insane. Like the electricity going through the air, just because they knew that the next day would be such a big swell. Like everyone was like, oh, how big do you think it'll be? What board are you going to ride? Like there wasn't like this silence among everyone. It was like everyone was like confiding in one another, like asking like, what are you guys going to do? Like, so it was pretty incredible.
Sometimes there's just nowhere for that energy to go. You know it's coming, there's nowhere to go, and you're just trying to get it out in a big way. Carolyn, have you ever experienced that, like the day before a big event, even if the waves weren't big, even if the pressure was there, if you're just like, I just need to get this energy out, otherwise I'm going to be a wreck all night?
I mean, every event there's like definitely an anticipation, for sure. You're definitely like, you're really excited, like those nerves, like don't really ever go away. I'd say probably Honolulu last year for me was definitely super, there's definitely like a lot of pressure built up and like a lot of, I don't know, I just wanted to like surf a heat so bad. I was like, I don't really want to wait another day. I just want to like surf. And, it was like flat the whole week before too. They ran the final day. So I think I was just really curious of how the waves were going to be and what board I was going to ride. And it's pretty interesting when you're like, I was surfing Ironwinds every day on like a little shortboard, and but the swell, the waves where I was going to be competing for the world title and were going to be like a lot bigger, and I was going to be on a completely different board. So that wave was nuts. I just think like, I don't know. I just think for me, it's more about like just kind of trying to be in the moment and living in the moment, and not trying to get too far ahead of myself. But yeah, I don't know. I'd probably say Honolulu for me had the most like built up. There was so much talk about the Olympics and the world title, and I don't know. But it was like exciting nerves. That's what it's all about. That's what makes it really exciting. But I'd say that definitely had the most nerves and excitement around it. That was probably like one of the biggest events of my life. So yeah, I'd say Honolulu last year for sure sticks out in my mind for sure.
There's a replay of Gabrielle's. Something
That's
that gets discussed a lot, like at this event, at this wave, is it's not that complicated a wave in terms of what you have to do. Like you have to line it up, obviously, but it's a real fundamentals based wave of like, you have to find your entry point, you have to set your entry speed, you have to make your drop, you've got to set your line, and that's kind of it. You're not necessarily timing sections, you're not doing turns, you're not trying to set up combinations, and it is a unique wave in that sense because it's still very, very difficult. Tati, was that kind of your experience out there as well, in terms of at the end of the day, it is kind of a fundamentals based wave?
It's so true, honestly. Caroline mentioned being in the spot is everything, and I could not agree more. Obviously, after being in the spot, the second best thing is execution on your drop. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but on that wave too, Gabriel was on his tippy toes and barely like pulled under the lip. And it's just like this single most scary feeling when you're like free falling through the air. You're like, oh geez, I hope I make this. And once you do, it's pretty rewarding because, well, obviously you have to make the wave after that. But I mean, I think if you're well positioned and you make the drop, then it's kind of just like you have to stay solid on your feet and make it. And I mean, there's nothing better than even just getting the vision for me. So it's pretty incredible, but that wave is so challenging to be well positioned and to know which wave is the wave you want to go for. And I think it's just, it's so, like you said, Dave, it's so simple yet so complicated at the same time. So yeah, there's
Tati,
definitely.
Did you find? I found, or like Tati and Tyler, you guys both been there. I found like sometimes when you're out there, like it's just the ocean's like mellow, and then all of a sudden like sets come and like the whole ocean moves, and you're just like scrambling. Like it's not. There's no really like signs of, it depends on the swell direction, but I feel like if it's like a west swell or something, it kind of just comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, oh my god, like you feel like you're taking off into the reef.
Honestly, Caroline, I remember both ways because first off, I went there first when it was like no one was around. Oh, actually, the first few days no one was around, and then everyone showed up for the point break thing. But like the same thing, like the ocean would just start moving and there's no one around, no noise, and I would be freaking out. And normally, like when I was younger, I would like try to go for like the bad ones, and Anthony would be like, what are you doing? Don't go in that wave, you're gonna die. And I'd be like, Wow, how's this wave? Oh, ouch.
It also like swell direction. So I feel like every 5 degrees, it changes so much. You know,
it does.
Like sometimes I think the last day I was there, it was a lot more south, and it was just so much fun. Like you can just take off and just go straight into the barrel, and even do some turns, and it was a lot. It was like actually an easy takeoff.
Well, yeah. So the south ones are like always the ones that are like
for sure. Those are so fun.
The long ones, but the west ones, like this one had a lot of west in it. The one Kelly just got. You see how it like
hollow.
Really just folded over itself, and it had that like kind of it turns back towards you. So see how it's like turning towards him at the end. So this is like the one you want, like because it's so thick and so west, but yeah, perfect direction and. It's scary, but it's the one, and the south ones obviously are like the clean, perfect ones.
Yeah, more playful for sure.
But, but
Kelly's look totally makeable. I don't know what the problem was there.
That one was freaking psycho.
Honestly,
sometimes you're out there
crazy.
and you get the combo swell. You get the south sets and the west sets, and like I go out there when it's like 3 foot. If a 3 foot west set comes in, I'm just like, that's a closeout. I'm not going. Like it looks like a closeout from where you're taking off. You're just like, I can see where it's going to close out on the reef, and then someone will go and they're like, oh, I got a great barrel, and I'm like, it's a psychological thing, I think, in a big way, and I think that's something that is really like only you get comfortable with experience in a lot of ways, and that it feels like kind of the two waves that people talk about a lot. It's Chopu and pipeline, and it feels like Chopu, just based on talking to people, whether they're men or women, they feel like they have a better opportunity to get experience out there and to get practice out there, as opposed to pipe where, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter your gender or whatever, like practicing out at pipe is a nightmare when it's breaking. Tyler, I think you've had experience at both spots. How do you feel about that perspective?
Yeah, I think looking at Eddie at both those waves, I would agree. I've been out pipe a couple of times, and it's hard work. And it's hard work for the boys to get waves, and it's hard work for anyone to get waves, especially in that time of year. I think if you go out there and you're really well supported, I think you can sometimes sneak a couple.
What do you mean? What do you mean well supported?
Just, if you go out there, and for me, I've been really lucky that I go out waves of consequence, and I generally have either Mikey or Owen there. And they've always kind of, pushed us to go the bigger ones. And their theories on big waves as well. People, I don't know if ever, like I've talked about that much, but their theories have always been, Tyler, you go the biggest set, like anywhere. Like you go the biggest one because it's the safest one. And I never quite got that, but it's like in any of the bigger sessions that I've done, like even, it's just what it is. It's just what they taught me, and it's just kind of the theory that I go off. I don't always like it, but it is kind of what it is. But definitely, I think I've only been to Chopu once, and I think looking back now, it wasn't really that playful kind of thing. There was high consequences. I definitely didn't have the boards. I was riding Owen's boards. I broke his boards. And so, but I would say the opportunity to actually get practice there is in Tahiti and Chopu, I think is a lot higher than at pipe. I think, before talking about the girls potentially in the future having an event there or the Olympics running there, I think our chances of improving there are a lot higher. I think if we did go back to an event there, I feel like I'm all for, like, all the girls will be charging and absolutely doing their best, but in reality, if it is 6 to 8 foot or bigger than that kind of 4 or 5 foot range, it's a different level. I think the approach and the way it could potentially be communicated it's definitely more exploratory than performance for the first year or so. I think having that classification will be important purely because you have 18 women, and depending on people's flexibilities is whether they can get there to practice or not. Sure. And then, you know, obviously we're talking ideally it's 4 foot. It's fun, it's playful, you get south, you get west, it's dangerous, but it's not, you know, it's dangerous, but it's not that 8 to 12 foot range where it is that next level. It is that next level of skill set. I think there's a kind of grade of, there's a certain level of like in any kind of apprenticeship thing, like you got your first years, you got your second years, third, fourth, and then you got your, you know, your fully licensed people and tradesmen. So I guess like the way I kind of look at it is that we'd all, as a collective group of women, be going there as first years. And with that comes the understanding that performance, you might have your, you know, Tati and your Carolines, but in a general sense, we've never competed there. We've never been in the lineup without the guys there going, this is the spot, these are the lineups. Even surfing it on an incoming swell and knowing the reef enough to kind of be able to navigate that solely off your own instincts, I think that's a different level again. But yeah, like that would be my comments to having a women's event there, would be that as a collective, I think experiencing it, free surfing is one thing, and it's super important to do that. In a heat, it's obviously a different thing. But yeah, that would be my sort of, I don't know how I got onto this, but comments.
No. I actually think it's a really good point. I think it actually talks to a little bit what we were talking about before with the vault episode, which I think now that I remember is 2005, but just the level of comfort that collectively the men had out there between when they started surfing out there for competition till recently. And yeah, I remember distinctly there were a couple of heats where, you know, it was actually pretty small, like it was 4 feet, you know, this was years and years ago. And the guys were in the wrong spot. They just weren't comfortable out there. And I remember our president, Wayne Bartholomew, was on the broadcast calling it a disgrace. But the reality is, if you don't have the experience out there and you don't know where to sit and you're not comfortable, it is one of those things that's going to take a few years. And, you know, the guys that were in that heat came back years and years later and got pretty good out there. And it's just sort of it's an experience thing, but you have to kind of start somewhere. Tati, what do you think about Tyler's thought there?
I 100% agree with Tyler. I think what the point she made is so true. And then to back your point, I think it needs to start somewhere. And that being said, I think the level of women surfing nowadays is ready for that pushing over the edge, kind of like a little, here you go, let's go, you know, a little boost. So I think I 100% respect Tyler's opinion and agree with it, because Chopu is a hard wave and it's nothing close to easy, nothing close to safe. It's far from safe and it's far from easy. So that being said, what she said about getting there and getting the practice and learning the lineup and being able to pick out the perfect waves in the lineup when it is a heat, it's all something you learn with time. And I think we're completely capable of it. I think in 2 to 3 to 4 years, when the Olympics do come around for Chopu, for France, that I think our level will even have gone up from there, you know? So that's what I hope. And regarding pipe, honestly, that wave is a beast in itself. Just the amount of people that surf there makes it dangerous. And I have to say, like, I've surfed pipeline really when I was younger, and I actually didn't get a lot of support from the men there. Hey, I'm busy. Sorry. You guys, I'm doing a podcast. I can't talk. Sorry, my cousin. For real, be quiet.
Good timing. We're talking about support from men, so that was like perfectly timed.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, they were annoying. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, so that being said, pipeline is a whole beast in itself. And I didn't receive tons of support from the men when I was out there. at a young age, and that was kind of hard for me. Like I was told by a boogie boarder, like, don't waste a wave. And I was like, but you're on a boogie board. So there's that tipping point where sooner or later the men at Pipe 2 are going to have to learn to, be in place with the woman.
I thought when Tyler was talking about support earlier, it was like, do you have a Volcom sticker on your board in like 2003 or like a Wolfpack sticker? I'd probably yell about it.
Well, yeah, like
but another thing that both of you guys are talking about too is I remember when the women came back and started competing at Sunset Beach and competing in kind of sizier conditions. It had been a few years of just really small waves, kind of on both tours in a big way, but it was one of those generational things because the women in the 70s and 80s, sunset and surfing bigger waves in Hawaii, that was kind of their thing. Like that was the standard by which the world's best surfers were measured. And then it went away, and it took like a little bit of while for the collective to get comfortable being back out there. I remember the first year we did it, like people just didn't want to go out. They didn't feel comfortable out there because it was a muscle that the world's best surfers hadn't exercised for a while. And Carolyn, I'm interested to hear your thoughts because you're coming in kind of at the tip of the spear on this next generation. And it feels like you're pretty game for anything in terms of waves of consequence or really anything that the tour throws at you.
Yeah, I do have to say I totally agree with what Tyler's saying and Tatiana. They came up with really, really great points. And it is a lot different when you're out there in a heat and you're just with one other girl and there's different swell directions and, like I only went there for 1 week and got like perfect waves, super fun size. Like, I had like Michelle Perez and Jeremy Flores and Mike Parsons, like telling me where to sit and helping me out a bunch. And, yeah, got a good little crew. But like I said again, though, I do think like that's the direction the sport's heading in. And, I just think like, why not start now? And I think, all the women are like, I don't know, like all the women are just pushing themselves so much in barrel riding and like even surfing the wave pool. Like I know a lot of, even myself, like I couldn't even really get barreled going right. And I didn't really have that technique down because I never been to a wave that had a right barrel. But then once I like practiced it and did it, I think, all the girls, Tatiana is one of them, like such a, we're getting totally barreled on the right, backside barrel riding. And so, yeah, I think they both came up with really good points. I think it's super important to have the right contest director and enough days. And, like Tyler said, it's super fun. And then it goes to like that next level. So I think we are going to have days that we're going to be super terrified. And that's just the way it is, though. And I think that's what we're going to get pushed in. And, we're kind of just going to have to deal with it. So, but yeah, I think those are two really, really great points that she brought up. And I think I'm really glad you said that. You nailed that, Tyler. And I totally agree with you. But I do think it's such a fun wave, and I think it's pretty incredible. And I think there's so many fun days for the girls that would crush it. And yeah, it's Tahiti's pretty incredible. So yeah.
There's kind of like two perspectives as they pertain to balancing gender performance in surfing. And those generally include a physicality component and an experience component. And what we're talking about is the experience component. Based on what we're watching here as this rear view counts down here, in terms of the physicality component, in terms of the fitness of the women on tour, how do you guys feel about the collective handling Tahiti? Not necessarily at this size, but just really any size and being able to get in early enough, being able to set themselves up for the barrel.
I think everyone on tour has got a rockin' bod, so to speak. I don't know. I think we all train really hard to do what we love. So I think we're all equipped with our bodies.
I think one of the issues we might face is that we might have an emphasis on boards purely because if you put me probably now, I might weigh 65 kilos. My paddle, there's not enough information or stats on how I paddle and the time difference in say 0 to 3 seconds and the amount of distance I cover You put me, I'm probably average size for a woman surfer, as in like height and weight. And then you put someone, say in the guys, like Mikey, who's probably, I don't know, 6'0". And then you obviously have Adriano, like to the shorter guys, and then you obviously got Owen, who's 6'4". And I think it'll be interesting to see what the distance that they cover between 0 and 3 seconds and the distance that we cover between 0 and 3 seconds. I know over, say, 100 meters, they're probably covered an extra 40 meters to 50 meters, even more, especially when you get to people like Owen and Geordie and stuff like that. So I think when it comes to the physicality and not just the experience, I think the physicality side it'll come down to we simply probably can't paddle as quick at certain times. I think that will draw a bigger emphasis on perhaps like a Gabby style board where it is 3 inches. We're on boats and we'll need two things there. We'll need to know how to ride it, but we'll also need to have the quads and the legs to be able to go and slide in, to knife it, or whatever. Either way, I think that will be an interesting thing. Not saying that we won't be able to do that. I think it will be an interesting challenge purely because, you got guys weighing 85 kilos. And I know in previous years I've used before I got sick, I weighed probably closer to 75 kilos and I used every bit of that weight to go down the face when I needed to throw myself over an edge. I find there's a big difference with the weight I am at now. I have to rely a lot more on timing and precision of my paddling skills than I did before. But I think that will be interesting. I 100% think that it'll evolve and it'd be just an interesting thing probably to look at.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.